A brand new analysis has made a shocking claim that there's no clinical evidence to support the use of collagen supplements to prevent or treat skin aging. So when I came across this study, I was initially stoked. So I'd taken collagen for a number of years, and when I read the abstract of the study, it sounded really convincing that I didn't need to buy collagen anymore, that I could save my money. But this is why we shouldn't just rely on what the abstract says, and this research journey, it ends with an important lesson. So let's start with this question. Why is this new claim about collagen supplements so shocking? Well, it directly contradicts a previous meta-analysis that was done in 2023. So that one, it included 26 randomized controlled trials, and it was looking at the effects of collagen supplements on skin hydration and elasticity. So those are two aspects of skin health that decline with age, and the statistical analysis showed that yes, collagen peptide supplements did significantly improve both of those metrics. But this latest meta-analysis, yes, it did find the same thing when it included all of the studies together, that yes, collagen supplements did significantly improve skin hydration and elasticity and also improve skin wrinkles. But then the authors conducted a subgroup analysis, and that's where they ultimately reach a different conclusion. So one subgroup that they considered was just those studies that weren't funded by pharmaceutical companies or supplement companies. So the logic here is that those studies would be less likely to give a biased result. So how do the numbers look for that subgroup? Well, now there's no statistically significant impact on skin hydration, elasticity, or wrinkles. A similar thing happened when they looked at just high-quality studies, so there was no statistically significant benefit when they were considering studies that were both high in quality and not funded by pharmaceutical companies. And all of this looks terrible because it sounds like the authors have discovered that the low-quality studies funded by pharmaceutical companies, those ones find benefits for collagen peptide supplements, but high-quality, non-funded studies don't find any benefits, and that raises serious doubts about whether collagen peptides really do have the benefits that we thought. But the story here isn't quite so simple. Remember, the meta-analysis is giving us pooled results of the studies when we combine them together. So if we look at the individual studies that were identified by this meta-analysis as high quality, we get a surprisingly different picture. So let me unpack this. The meta-analysis uses two different common measures of study quality, and there were 9 studies in total that got the highest marks for both of those measures. And we just saw that when the authors looked at just those 9 studies, they concluded that there was no benefit overall from collagen peptide supplements. So you might expect that none, or at most 1 or 2 of those individual studies may have found benefits. But here's the surprise. So of those 9 studies, only 1 found no benefit. Another one found mixed results, but the other 7 all showed positive impacts from collagen peptide supplements on aspects of skin aging. And what about when we zero in on just the highest quality studies that aren't funded by pharmaceutical companies? Well, there are just 5 of those studies, and of those, 4 of them found positive results. So in other words, almost all of the best studies did still find positive impacts. So how then do the authors of this meta-analysis wind up with such a deflating conclusion that there is no benefit? Well, it all has to do with the statistics about how a meta-analysis is done, and it can actually lead to a different result that can be misleading. So let me explain 2 reasons why. So first, there's the way that the researchers have pulled together the impacts of collagen peptides. So there's a challenge when trying to add together the results from different studies. That's because they don't measure skin in the exact same way. So for instance, one study might describe the improvements in skin moisture by measuring how much water is lost through the skin, but another study might use an electrical current to measure skin moisture content within the skin. So both of those metrics are relevant to improve skin moisture, but we can't directly combine them. So what the researchers do is convert specific measures into what's called standard mean difference, or SMD. So it's a way to capture the size of an effect on a standard scale. And once that's done, then we can compare the different effect sizes of these different studies, and we can also pool them to calculate the overall effect size. But the challenge here is that when we standardize the results in this way, especially when the studies themselves are very different, we can lose important context. We can end up with pooled results that seem to contradict the individual findings. Then there's a second part of the process of pooling that can yield a misleading outcome. So this relates to the confidence intervals. So confidence intervals are really useful concepts in statistics. They tell us about our level of confidence in the results of a study. So when researchers combine studies where the results are fairly different from one another, the final confidence interval gets larger. So it's possible to have a situation where all studies can show a positive result, but the size of the results vary a lot. So that can make us say, in effect, the study results are so different that we don't have confidence in that we know what's going on here. And that issue shows up in the meta-analysis. So look at the results for the non-industry funded studies. So with skin hydration, the SMD or standard mean difference is 0.33 and the confidence interval is minus 0.6 to plus 0.73. So that confidence interval means that we're pretty sure that the true impact is somewhere between those numbers. But the fact that it drops to below 0 is the reason why the result isn't statistically significant. That's because it's possible that the true impact is no effect. And that's why we say that there's no evidence of a positive effect. And yes, that's technically right from a statistical standpoint. But notice how almost the whole range of positive effect sizes is positive. So this means that yes, we can't be 100% certain of a benefit, and the data suggests that a negative effect is extremely unlikely, and a moderate positive effect is entirely plausible. So it's the same story for elasticity when we just look at the high quality studies. So the confidence interval, it just barely crosses 0, so the authors confidently declare that there's no statistical benefit. But for me, that misses the wood for the trees, especially when the vast majority of high-quality studies, before their measurements were converted into standard mean differences, showed a benefit. So I just want to highlight this point again. The individual studies, most of them show benefits for collagen peptide supplements on aspects of skin aging, but when they're combined into this meta-analysis, they're converted into a standard mean difference and then they're pulled together. And it's just because the confidence intervals, they just barely cross over 0. That's why the authors say there's no statistically significant evidence of a benefit. And we've got additional reasons to think that these positive effects are probably likely, and that's because the studies, they give us a mechanism for how collagen peptides work to affect the skin. So for example, one study investigated how fibroblast cells grown in a lab respond to collagen peptides. So for example, one study investigated how fibroblast cells, which were grown in a lab, how they respond to collagen peptides. Now fibroblast cells in the skin, they make collagen and elastin. Now when the fibroblast cells were exposed to collagen peptides, they increased their production of collagen and elastin, as well as another important molecule called proteoglycan that's critical for skin hydration. Now, that's all well and good, but that's just in a lab. So how do we know that when we ingest collagen peptides, how do we know that they actually do indeed reach our skin? Well, we've got numerous clinical trials in humans showing that collagen peptide supplements, they do boost the levels of relevant peptides in the blood. And we can see from both mice and human studies that once the collagen peptides reach our blood, they are transported to our skin. But one big limitation of most of these collagen peptide studies that we've looked at is that the collagen peptides, they're compared against a placebo rather than directly against a protein supplement. So ideally, we want to match the protein intake. That way we know whether or not the effects on the skin are because of collagen peptides and not just because of more protein intake. So currently there's only one study that directly compares collagen peptides against protein supplements for skin. But the researchers there in that study, they were looking at wound healing, not signs of skin aging. So it examined burn patients. So one group took protein and the other group took a matching amount of collagen peptides. So the collagen peptide group, they experienced a significantly higher wound healing rate compared to the protein group. So that study suggests that collagen peptides, they do seem to have benefits related to skin beyond regular protein intake. But while that's encouraging, it's high time for a study on skin aging specifically to be done that directly compares collagen peptides to a matched protein supplement. But let's get practical for a second. There are 3 takeaway points from this new meta-analysis. First, it's critical to read the full study and not just rely on the abstract. Second, we need more study data to be able to hit certain thresholds of statistical significance when we focus on just the highest quality studies. But even so, the combined meta-analysis, it just barely touched the 0 mark, and I wonder here if we're missing the wood for the trees, especially when almost all of the individual studies, and this is critical here, when almost all of the individual studies have shown positive effects. And that includes trials which are marked as high quality and aren't funded by collagen peptide supplement makers. Plus, new studies continue to happen that weren't included in that meta-analysis. So for example, I did a video a couple of months ago on a study that was published in April of this year, and it looked at the impacts of collagen peptides on fibroblasts. And like many others, it found positive impacts for collagen peptide supplements on wrinkles, elasticity, and hydration. And the third point to remember is that, as I mentioned, we do have evidence for the potential mechanism involved here. So we not only see many high-quality studies showing that collagen peptide supplements help, we've also got experiments to help us understand the underlying mechanism for how they might help. And finally, there are no known health risks associated with taking collagen peptides. So in light of all of these points, Personally, I will continue to take a collagen peptide supplement at 12.5 grams a day, but there's something much more powerful when it comes to helping us keep young, and there's absolutely no doubt about its impact. So make sure to check out this next video here to hear about a recent study and what one researcher calls the closest thing we have to the fountain of youth.